Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 2 of the Rich and Facts podcast, featuring your host, Richard Damas, and my lovely co-host over here, Alex Monteverde. So, today we're going to be talking about Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals between our Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, LeBron was saying after Game 6, Alex, the two best words in sports. I think he's right, Game 7. I think this game is going to be huge, and a lot of legacies are going to be written in this game, especially for, where LeBron is at this point in his career, and some of the veterans like J.R. Smith. And, even for these young guys coming in right now, I think they really have a chance to kind of put their name in the history books early on. So I want to get your take on what you think of this matchup.
I think the Celtics have a good chance to win. I think the Cavs have struggled to beat the Celtics when the Celtics are at home, and I think that LeBron's supporting cast, especially because Kevin Love is out with a concussion or whatever, that he doesn't really have the supporting cast that he's had in years past. So going into a Game 7 on the road, I couldn't put it past him, because he's proven time again in the past that if he wins that Game 6, even if you're going home for Game 7, it doesn't matter. He can beat you, but he still has a mountain to climb in that regard, and he doesn't have all the help that he could. And I think the Celtics are a more well-rounded team, so in that single-game atmosphere of the Game 7, I think it'd be easy for him to maybe defer to his teammates and then not assert himself the way that he's capable of. He scored 46 points, so if he doesn't come out and do that again, I don't know if the Cavs have a chance to win if he doesn't assert himself in terms of scoring first rather than pure playmaking, more like a point guard who needs to score the basketball.
See, I think he has to get contributions from his teammates. I mean, we saw in Game 2, he dropped 42 points, and they still lost by double digits. So I think what we saw in that game was, as great as he can play on his own, he's got to have a second or third guy give him something.
But he can't be focusing on playmaking to the exclusion of getting his own shot, because one of the games in the series, he had 5 assists and 6 turnovers, and he was 1 of 6 from 3-point land. And otherwise his stats were good. He had 10 rebounds. I forget how many points he had. So for another player, that's a decent game. But going 1 from 6 from 3-point land, turning the ball over more than you actually assist, those things, it's easier for him to direct the offense if he's focusing first and foremost on scoring the basketball himself. And then once he's started to draw double teams and stuff, he would be in a better position to create offense. But he has to start it, because if he thinks that those guys around him are going to propel him through the first quarter, I would really be expecting that.
I agree. He's got to set the tone. I'm just getting flashbacks of, you remember in 2012 when we were up 3-2, when LeBron was with the Heat, and then he got 40. But in that game, he just came out and he was in attack mode. Like you said, he wasn't trying. It wasn't like he was trying to get his teammates involved.
He only had 5 assists. He had 15 rebounds, so he dominated the game. And that just proves, for LeBron, it's not really even about his playmaking. His playmaking is something that happens after the fact of him being a great player, is that when he's on the offensive end, the way you have to stop him on defense is just to get the ball out of his hands. But he can still make good passes, so if you double team him, he can kick the ball out to an open shooter, except for if you're kicking the ball out to J.R. Smith, if you're kicking the ball out to other shooters that are struggling. Basically, if you're not kicking it out to Kyle Korver, are you really getting a good shot by making what may be technically described as the right play by passing the ball? I think he's got to attack the basket, try to get as many easy points as he can get. Because in the last game, he had 20 plus points in the first half, and he really didn't even seem to assert himself too tremendously in the first half. I thought he was still slightly reserved in the way he played in that first half, even though he scored a lot of points. So I think if he came out and he did something like that again, as long as he's putting in the points, that's all that really matters. If he's getting good opportunities, drive the ball to the basket, a little off balance, going to the right side of the basket, throw it in off the glass, bullshit shot he does, If he has to do that to get an easy shot, it is what it is. He's certainly big enough and strong enough to get an open shot doing that. So get close to the basket. But don't go 1 for 6 from three-point land. It doesn't help anybody if you're shooting 16% from three-point land. So I feel like he's got to try to make the easiest plays that he can, because he'll have a lot on his shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, when LeBron's jump shot is going, he likes to stick with it. He gets comfortable with it, especially when his three's going. You'll see him, he'll drive the ball up, and he'll just pull up from three if he's made, his last 2 or 3 3-pointers. He just, when he's feeling it. But what I also think LeBron is good at is just, he won't stick with the jump shot either. He wants to get to the rim. But sometimes I think he's a little nervous about getting to the rim because he's not a great free throw shooter.
He's a bad free throw shooter for a superstar, except for in the playoffs. He's obviously a little better in the playoffs than he is in the regular season.
I think he's what was he? I think he's under 80% in terms of, you can look that up in terms of his free throw shooting percentage. But I feel like especially late in games, when the game's really tight, I think he gets a little nervous sometimes about trying to draw that contact inside because he doesn't want to miss any of those free throws. And just kind of going off what you're saying about LeBron being a scorer, I agree. I think he has to come out and set the tone because your role players haven't played well on the road. And as far as him in the first half of Game 6 not being ultra aggressive, that was okay because you got contributions from guys like George Hill, who had 20 points, Jeff Green.
I don't think you can rely on them to do that 2 times in a row.
No, that's why.
I think LeBron has to lead the charge even more than he did in Game 6. He's going to have to do more because I don't think Al Horford's going to score 2 points again. I don't think that Jason Tatum's going to struggle like he did in the first half.
Horford plays a lot better at home. And he's supposed to be our veteran, our captain. Dude, why is it so hard for you to bring that game on the road?
I told you last time, I said that the question for Horford is, Brad Stevens said, even though he only scored 2 points, he played a good game. But he could say that, and he's his coach, he has to kind of say that.
Mm-hmm.
But Al Horford needs to score more than 2 points. He can't have played a good game if he did everything else and he missed the shots. That's one of the biggest parts of the game, is making your shots. And especially as a max level player, he's got to be more capable of, if he's going to have one of those 15 and 12 nights, he really has to pull it together because he can't become such a small part of the offense. They've got to get him easy baskets, post him up on there's no Kevin Love. If Jeff Green's playing his place, post him up on him. Post him up on anybody who posts up. Get him the ball down low. He stands. Some of the time when Al Horford doesn't get going offensively, it seems to be because his perimeter game is not on point for the game, and if he's not shooting the ball well and setting the tone out there, then he doesn't assert himself as much in the paint, and then that bleeds into his scoring. So I think they've got to just get him in the paint, get him the easiest baskets he can get, pick and roll him to the basket to see if he can get easy baskets. But he's got to score more than he did in the last game.
I agree, especially the fact that Al, deep down, I feel like is an outside inside kind of guy. He wants to shoot more than he wants to be inside and do damage. But I feel like when he's not making his shots, he kind of loses confidence about trying to go in and get the easy buckets in.
But I don't understand why a 6'10" guy, when he's not shooting well, doesn't just go into the paint. Jay and Tristan Thompson shows that you can get significant minutes just being a defensive presence, somebody in the paint who gets defensive and offensive rebounds. you're in a much better position to get a rebound if you've been basically hanging out on the block and then you're going into the paint when the shot goes up than if you've been setting high pick and rolls and you're just hanging on the perimeter, popping for a jump shot. Like, you're not putting yourself in a great position to get offensive rebounds. So I think, like in the last games, the Cavaliers got a ton of offensive rebounds. So Al Horford really needs to set more of a physical tone. And if they need to put in Aaron Baines more to get that sort of physicality to their defense, it's whatever they have to do.
So check this out, right? I was looking up a stat that I saw. I think it was NBCSports.com. I think Horford might actually struggle tonight. I saw the stat and it said Horford, he scored 31 points on 61 possessions with Kevin Love as his primary defender, and shooting 76% from the field and 60% from three-point range. So that's a matchup that might actually hurt the Celtics tonight, because if Al Horford's not being guarded by Kevin Love, kind of like in Game 6, you're going to see a lot more of Larry Nance Jr., LeBron James, and Jeff Green defending him.
But he also needs to... He had a tough time in the last game making passes out of double teams, and I think the Celtics have to be better about knowing when he's in the post that they have to get open quickly for him, so he's not searching for an open man for too long of a period where he gets, like, the double team comes in and then there's a contest of whether he throws the ball and it gets deflected or stolen. I think they've got to be able to throw like crisper and cleaner passes out of the post, but you still have to get him in the post. I don't care if LeBron's on him. LeBron on Horford shouldn't be a great matchup because they say LeBron can guard true centers. I'd want to see if Al Horford could literally post up LeBron, because he's got 2 inches on him, and LeBron may be athletic, but if you just keep him down in the post and you physically punish him the whole time and you're just constantly fighting him for post position, you take him off the perimeter too, so he's not making spectacular plays on defense, and just feed the ball out of the post to open shooters and shit. Like, there's a range of things they can do, but Al Horford can't just have 2 points. It's unacceptable. He gets paid too much money and he's too big of a part of their salary to not contribute.
You think he gets nervous when LeBron's guarding him?
He shouldn't. Maybe he does, but if LeBron's on him, that means their small forward is guarding the center, so there should be a matchup problem for the Cavs somewhere on the floor. Either, so who would be the one who would have switched? Would that be Tristan Thompson on somebody like Terry Rozier, like more of a perimeter player? So if you have that mismatch, Terry Rozier should be able to dance around Thompson on the perimeter and attack the basket. So you should have a mismatch somewhere in the offense that you can take advantage of. If one of their wing players is suddenly going to guard a big, you probably have a big somewhere out there on the floor who's out of position, and you just have to exploit that matchup. And whether that's passing out of the post or taking quicker shots in the post, getting deeper position. But like, how often do you see Al Horford catch the ball right next to the basket and make one move and go for a shot? If he's in the paint and he's in the post, he backs down for quite a long period of time because he's slow and he's trying to. No, he's not slow. He's methodical about how he gets his work done in the paint. He doesn't just post right next to the basket, because that takes more physicality to fight your way right next to the basket, post up, and then just get the ball thrown into you in a clean entry pass and be able to go up right next to the hoop, because that's the highest. It's harder to do like a running, leaning, like hook shot or whatever, but if you're right next to the basket,
Kevin Love does that a lot.
You should be able to turn around and just throw it in off the glass from like 3 feet. So I think they need to get him the easiest looks that they can get him, because that's going to be an important part of their offense, is getting him points. Whether he scores like 15 points or if he goes for 20 plus, it really doesn't matter. He has to be part of the offense, though. He can't be 2-point contribution. That's not enough.
And they're better as a team when he's doing his damage inside, because it creates opportunities for everyone else, because all of a sudden now you have to guard the paint because Al Horford's a threat down there. Then it sets up Rozier, Tatum, and Brown on the outside. So I feel like Al is at his best, or the team is at their best when Al's contributing inside the paint as well. It just sets the tone for everyone else. When he tries to get finesse and try to jump shoot his way out of a game, it doesn't work, because then we don't really have another guy that can really get into the paint, be physical enough to post up and just get their own shot that way. I mean, Al's not very physical. That's why, like you said, he has to be more methodical. He can't just like a Joel Embiid just back down, just one bump, two bump, and then just go for it. He kind of has to time it a little bit. And even then, he's kind of in there for a little while, and you're like, dude, you're not really making it.
But part of the
down.
reason he doesn't do that is because they do so much picking and rolling action with him up by the top of the key, so up by the top of the free throw line on the right side or the left. You always have Celtics perimeter players taking screens that he sets, and then he either pops for a jump shot or he rolls to the basket in order to get something. And I'm saying in the flow of the game, he needs to settle in the paint when he gets like free runs down there, and nobody's going to like hit him to get him out of that paint. If he can just get there in the path of least resistance and then take advantage of opportunities when he's in the paint, I think that would be good for the offense, is to not have him be quite so present on the perimeter all the time. Because it's a problem when your center is out on the perimeter and isn't setting the tone inside. And I think it would be good to see him do that.
So
get a little mix of the inside and outside game.
Is he your X factor tonight then?
No, Tatum. Because Tatum's the best player that the Celtics have right now.
Right now.
And he has to...
Better than your boy Terry Rozier?
Oh, yeah, he's better than Rozier. Because he scores more than Rozier. Most times. Like, Rozier is a great player, too. But Jason Tatum, I said this before.
Great player.
I think Jason Tatum, of all the players on the roster, he should be the only one who's untouchable. Because even Kyrie shouldn't be on the same level of untouchable as Jason Tatum.
That's a bold statement.
Tatum will be better than Kyrie, and I think it's just a matter of him developing. But you see him scoring 20-plus points in a lot of these games on efficient shooting, playing decent defense. They can't leave him in the post with LeBron, though, because LeBron's just going to destroy him by backing him down to the post.
He's going to have to get in the weight room this summer.
He will.
He needs to get in the gym.
But I'm not going to criticize anybody who's in the NBA already. Those dudes are so much bigger and stronger than the average person, and so I couldn't criticize him as like, oh, he's 19 or whatever, he's not big and strong enough. It's like I'm reasonable enough to know that he's about as big and strong as he was ever going to be, and if he has more time now in his next off season as a professional to like get his body a bit stronger so he doesn't get the ball stripped from him going to the basket as much, yeah, that's fine, but I'm not going to criticize somebody for being at an earlier point in their development. That's crazy.
I think it's easy to say he has the highest ceiling right now because he's the youngest, and he is...
But he's already playing at the same level as Jaylen Brown is.
I think Jaylen Brown's a better athlete, but Tatum has this... I think Tatum has a better skill set. He can create his own shot. He can go ISO. The guy can get to the rim. He's a better three-point shooter. So, we just really want him to be... We want him to get the physical part of his game going. Right now, Jaylen Brown's a better athlete, but I feel like the guys that last in the NBA longer, the guys that have a true, I don't want to say finesse skill set, but scoring. You know what I mean? Like scoring, it all comes down to scoring, how efficient you can be the scorer. And, when I looked at Jaylen Brown, for me, the worst that I thought he could end up being was a Jeff Green, right?
That'd be pretty bad. Well, that'd be a pretty hard fall from,
all right,
from where he is.
I mean,
I think he's better right now than Jeff Green ever was for any team, because he's scoring like 17 points a game and he's shooting like 41% from 3-point range. Like, Jaylen Brown's a great player, and I'll be the first to say that if the Celtics are going to trade for Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Davis, that I think they should go trade Brown rather than Tatum, but Brown is a very good player in his own right. He's athletic, and he's actually physically strong enough that he can defend LeBron in the paint to some degree, more so than Tatum. So he's obviously a good player if they can hold on to him, but he's also a very valuable trade piece because he could be a superstar.
He could. You have a lot of guys that could be potentially superstars. And I mean, I'm fine with trading him for Towns. You know, like we were talking about before we got on this podcast, because I think we just and this to me, this will go into one of our later topics about the Celtics off-season moves. But I really think this Game 7 is really going to tell you what this team needs to do next, especially if they lose, because the way I see it, you have three guys that can give you perimeter scoring. And Hayward, even though he's not playing this season, we know he's going to give you perimeter scoring in defense. Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But my question is, do we have enough volume scoring from our bigger guys? And is that going to be the reason why they lose tonight if they do? My X factor tonight is Al Horford, because I think when the Celtics have won at home, or just won in general, even that one road game in Philly, I feel like when they win, it's usually because Horford plays really well and your boy Terry Rozier plays really well.
Mm-hmm.
Jaylen Brown's numbers, I think he actually scores more points in Cleveland than he does in Boston. And what that tells me is your game travels, but it doesn't always seem like your contributions contribute to the actual wins. And that's something that matters to me. Like, when you play well and your team wins, I'm like, okay, to me, you're a little more important, right, than someone, okay, you shoot or you're having a good game, but it's not leading to the wins. And there's a lot of factors that kind of play into, points, plus-minus ratio, but I've just noticed that for the most part, when the Celtics have when they've won games this postseason, it's usually because Terry Rozier's playing well and Al Horford's playing well. But I'm going to give it to Al Horford because I think Horford plays a lot better at home, and when he's inside, setting everyone else up, it just helps the team so much more. It helps himself because he's going to play well when he's scoring inside. But, going into the next topic, like, what do you think about the LeBron versus the Celtics rivalry, man? Like, it seems like
he needs to come over to the dark side. He needs to talk to Danny Ainge and say, "Yo, I've been struggling against you guys. I've had the upper hand for a long time, but I see the writing on the wall.
5 years.
The Celtics are going to be better than me by next year if I stay with the Cavs." So I think LeBron should. Everybody talks about, or people talk about, LeBron could go to Houston, or he could stay in Cleveland, or he could go to LA. I think, or they talk about Philadelphia as well. I should mention that. But I think the Celtics are further along their point of development than Philadelphia is. They seem to have a better culture and system. So I think if he's serious about being like a true off the ball, true small forward, like take advantage more so of his athleticism, having to do less like standing on the perimeter, holding the ball, waiting for a play to develop so he can pass, run over the guy he passed it to, and get the ball back, and then create another play out of that. I think he'd be better off, in a nice structured Celtic system, a Brad Stevens system. Now whether, Kyrie would want to be on the same team as LeBron, I couldn't say that. But imagine that. But imagine that because I think for LeBron, the rivalry with the Celtics, he's had the upper hand for a number of years. Basically, he started going to the finals, and he's just never really stopped. And, the Celtics haven't been really true contenders to him since 2012, even last year. Like, last year's team, you watched them in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they got one game. They were lucky to get one game.
They were.
And they got smashed in those other two games, and they won one game because Marcus Smart had an unusually good game. But I think this year you could see that the Celtics are a way better match. Even if they lose in 7, they're right there, and they could have easily, beat the Cavs in this series, even if it turns out they lost. So they've made a lot of progress, even from last season, where they were in the Eastern Conference Finals. But
it's a whole different team, man. And just with this rivalry with the Celtics, like, I was watching highlights earlier today of just 2008 when Paul Pierce and LeBron were going at it, and they both had 45. And you kind of look at how that's similar to. Well, I mean, first your point about LeBron going to like the Celtics, man. It's
Sign
Dude.
and trade.
dude.
Sign and trade.
You sign LeBron, you gotta trade somebody. You can't have LeBron.
That's
and
what I'm
Hayward,
saying,
Tatum,
though.
and Brown. So who'd you?
I would
Who'd you
I would
get rid of
legitimately be like, yo,
You gotta get rid of
take
Hayward.
take
if you do
Hayward and take Rozier, and maybe you get one other role player, and I'd say that's all you can get in because a sign and trade means we would lose this guy in free
that. You
agency.
said Tatum and Rozier.
No, I meant Brown and Rozier. My fault. But I think if you I didn't even say Brown, did I? I said Hayward and Rozier.
Yeah,
I
Hayward.
didn't say anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So you're keeping Tatum and Brown. You're giving up Rozier, but you do get Kyrie back. And then you're giving up Hayward because he is that max contract, level contract that, like, if LeBron were reasonable and he wanted to play for the Celtics, there's no reason to imagine he does. But if he wanted, he could fit right into that Gordon Hayward salary. I know he's probably eligible for a supermax deal, but
We can't
does
pay him that
LeBron
much
James
money.
need all that money if he really wanted to come play for a team where he'd be in a good system that would use him? Like, imagine LeBron James in the Celtics defense. Like, that'd be crazy.
If he chooses to play defense, I mean, like, you can't do this thing where you're just coasting and, you want to take the first or the second quarter off so you can rest yourself for the third. Like, Brad Stevens he's gonna match you up with who he thinks you have a matchup against, and he expects you to go after loose balls. There was a point this season where LeBron, I think, was the worst ranked defender of like all players that were averaging like 30-something minutes a game. It was like a weird stat, but it's like, dude, you can't do that in a Celtics uniform. Like, we want you to play hard every single play, every single night. You can have a bad game scoring, but you can't lack of effort, and that's something LeBron's kind of been.
But their defensive system with the Cavs, like, it's been better, and it was good in the last game, but I think people said the same thing about you said the same thing about Kyrie last year. Can Kyrie play defense? And then you watched him all year, and some people in retrospect have tried to say, "Oh, the Celtics improved on defense because Kyrie's not on the floor," and it's like they're probably slightly better, but Kyrie fit really well into that system because he's still 6'3", so he can still play in his own defense. And LeBron James, like in a Brad Stevens style defense, like I'm sure he would do perfectly fine.
Well, for me, it's not about whether LeBron can or can't, because we've seen for his entire career, very capable defender. I mean, there are probably a couple seasons where he could have won Defensive Player of the Year. I wish he would have gotten it once just to sort of strengthen his LeBron versus Jordan argument. But my thing is, at this point in LeBron's career, can he play 82 games and play intense defense?
He doesn't have to play 82 games. Who plays 82 games in the modern NBA?
LeBron did this season.
There's no real reason for anybody to play that many games. Like, in reality, there's no honor in playing every game if it hurts your ability to be ready for the playoffs. And there's no reason why, like, a great player can't take time off. Like, the Celtics have shown, like Al Horford, he hasn't played any full seasons with the Celtics. Ditto Kyrie Irving. Like, these people are still valuable, even if you only have them for part of the season. Like, the Celtics are in the position they are going home for Game 7 because Kyrie Irving helped them get a bunch of wins during the regular season. So he's still making a contribution, even though it's the playoffs and he's been hurt for months. So to get him for 70 games even, I think that'd be fine.
So why not just shorten the season then?
Why not? There's no reason why not. The only reason why not is because ticket prices and the owners and the players, and they don't want to reduce the amount of money that they make. So they collectively bargain over that. They negotiate about that. They understand that they get a slice of the pie, and that the pie is a certain size because they play a certain amount of games that are broadcast on TV. And a certain amount of seats in the arena are sold, and they sell a certain amount of hot dogs and beer and bullshit like that.
So these things all come into account, because if you play 64 games and not 82, you got like 18 games of the year. So you have to deduct those all from what the league is making. So you factor that into television contracts, everything, how valuable the league is based on how many business days of the year they're actually open for business. So if the players are serious about that, they can collectively bargain with the owners, and they may not make it may have a negative impact on how much money they make, or it may just slow down the rate of expansion for the league. But I think it'd be better for the league for them to play less games. It's not like baseball either, where there's year-long things like, I'm going to hit 40 home runs. You don't see individual numbers, like Steph Curry hit like 400 some threes in one year, but you don't really hear about cumulative numbers, like how many blocks or whatever somebody got in a year. Whereas in a sport like baseball or in a sport like football, you really view those amount of games as like the true test that you come out of that, and there are certain benchmarks that let you help you understand whether they've played well over that period or not. 40 home runs, 1,000 rushing yards, even though that number really comes from nowhere. That's basically like 60 yards a game. That's not great contribution, but it's not bad either. Those sorts of things. So for the NBA, because it's all based on per game averages, those don't change whether you play 64 or 82 games. So it's all about the money situation. What do they want to do about the money? They'll figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, for that reason, that's why I don't think they'll shorten the season, because there's too much money to be made on
People
both
still
sides.
get hurt. People don't understand, like, if you shorten the season, it doesn't necessarily mean less players are going to get hurt, although it might mean that because there's less games. There's no guarantee that that's the case. People can still get hurt earlier on.
Gordon Hayward got hurt game one.
Exactly. So you're never going to completely fix the problems of, like, the long sports season. But also for basketball, you have to play a certain amount of games every year, because you do want to figure out which teams are better, and you figure that more based on large sample sizes rather than small sample sizes. Like the playoffs, like, I don't know how the Raptors got 4-0'd by LeBron. That's embarrassing.
Oh,
that's absolutely embarrassing. Like, they should be ashamed of themselves, because they're supposed to be better than that. And the fact that they didn't do that, it makes you question their regular season. But it's like, no, over the course of a regular season, they're a good team. They just have one ginormous problem, and it's LeBron James.
We talked about, dude, I mean, I could talk to you about the Raptors forever. Like, I told you, I wrote an article on why I thought this would be their time, having the home court. DeRozan hitting a career high in threes, Lowry hitting a career high in threes, and just that bench. And they just still couldn't get it done. And, they're the LeBronto Raptors. I'm not even going to go to the Raptors because they pissed me off so much, and we could talk about them for hours. This is the Eastern Conference Finals preview, not a Raptors preview, so I'm going to stay up the Raptors. But, just as far as, like, LeBron and just, the rivalry, like, with the Celtics, he's had the upper hand for a couple of years, and we really haven't been able to. It's funny because there was like a gap where I feel like his first year or two in Miami, we kind of feel like, okay, the Celtics have a matchup against them. We could potentially win this. Like, you remember 2011 when I think we were down 2-0, and then we were at home and Rondo had the messed up elbow.
Was that 2011 or 2012?
It was 2011. 2012 we went 7. 2011
because 2011 they got 4-1, right?
That was when
it was also like there was some bullshit about it. Was either in game 1 or game 2 on a very crucial play that Dwayne Wade just plainly hit Rondo in the face when he was going to the basket, and there was like a big change in momentum. I remember in that series just because there was like an obvious fucking foul that wasn't called, and that shit always pissed me off because I was like, yo. Ever since LeBron went to Miami, these motherfucking referees been helping this dude out against the Celtics. And the Celtics were fragile at the time. They couldn't afford to have referees fucking with them at that point.
I think not having Kendrick Perkins for that part of the big three, that really hurt
Kendrick
them.
Perkins was the real deal. Like, people,
people don't understand in the NBA, if you have a role player, this is why I talk about at center. Kendrick Perkins never going to get spectacular amounts of rebounds or points, but he plays hard defense. He stands in the middle of the floor. He anchors the defense. He gets some rebounds. He defends like the rim basically, and that's what getting defensive rebounds is all about. He's a physical presence on the offensive end, but he doesn't have to get a lot of touches because he knows that's not his strength. And I think a player like that fit really well into that 08 team where they had Rondo and Ray Allen and Pierce and Garnett. So they didn't need him filling it up. Like offensively, they needed him to play that role center position. I think like that big man is something the Celtics really lacked when he wasn't playing. And it was evident when he wasn't on the court that they weren't as good. Like it's really interesting to see how important like a role player like that can be to a team.
Absolutely. I mean, you're seeing it with Golden State. You're seeing
Andre
it with Houston.
Iguodala, right?
You need a guy that can just play that five. You don't even necessarily need like a true center. You just need a guy that can
stand
inside.
up there and be that tall and big and physical and just the JaVale McGee type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
JaVale McGee. Like
David West, Steven, people,
exactly.
Zaza Pachulia, even back when they had, who did they have? They
Bogut.
had Andrew Bogut, yeah. Like when they had Andrew Bogut too,
yeah.
like they were nasty when they had Andrew Bogut. He was a good fit into what they did.
People forget when the Warriors are up 3-1 against the Cavs, Bogut went down with the injury. I don't think he played in Game 7. If I remember, they
didn't or some
it was hurt. Like, I mean, Iggy was hurt, but everyone's hurt, but I'm pretty sure Bogut, he either didn't play or he left early. There were a couple guys who were like, not big time names, but guys that really contribute on the defensive side of the ball, and I feel like not having Bogut, I'm telling you, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure he didn't play in Game 7. But that just opened up the pain for LeBron. Like you said, with the whole Kendrick Perkins thing, the Celtics, they struggled at the end of the Big Three at a rebound because they didn't have Perkins there. They had to play KG inside more, and KG was able to get some matchups being more athletic.
KG was more of a mid-range player, even though he was a big man. He was good at defense. Mm-hmm. On the offensive end, you didn't see Kendrick Perkins, Kevin Garnett. He would definitely post people up, but he wasn't. I think the reason he didn't play center, even though he was over 7 feet tall, was because he wasn't as physically big as like a Shaquille O'Neal or something like that. So he played more of a finesse game, especially with that mid-range jump shot that he had. And so they needed somebody like Kendrick Perkins to take that, like grind it out, more physical, playing really just kind of tough defense rather than like spectacular defense. I think Kendrick Perkins was really valuable right next to Kevin Garnett. He made Kevin Garnett better by doing all those little things that Garnett didn't have to do when he had Perkins out there.
I agree. He cleaned up a lot of the mistakes for their team. A lot of people think that you need a center to stop LeBron. Like you need a dominant center. You don't need a dominant center. You just need a guy who can just get in there and just face up and just protect the rim. Your superstars can be your wing players, but just get someone in there. And I think with this matchup, that's what interests me so much about this Game 7 is the one thing I feel like the Celtics, I don't know if they have at a high enough level, is at their bigs with Horford and Baines. Is that enough to keep LeBron from getting out of the paint? Because LeBron has killed the Celtics in the paint.
I thought it was good earlier in the year when they had Tice. Remember when they had Tice and they were rotating in Tice and Baines, and they usually wouldn't play Tice and Baines at the same time because they both played that Kendrick Perkins type center position where it's more about picking and rolling, no popping really. Although Baines has taken some shots from 3-point range, but it's more about playing that defensive role, being the big man. I think if they had Tice right now, they'd be in a much better position because it stretches them to only really be able to put. Because Greg Monroe hasn't played very much either, which is disappointing.
I don't think 7 guys.
I don't think he ever quite fit into the system for whatever reason. He hasn't played very much. But if they could rotate in like a Greg Monroe more often,
That'd be interesting to see, but I don't know if Greg Monroe is really even capable of fulfilling that role. His role has to probably be different to utilize him best.
You always get some unknown hero in Game 7, though. So either some guy starts for the first time.
Hashtag Kelly Olynyk. Go get yourself a contract, boys.
Yeah, I mean, this would be a night for Greg Monroe to, do some damage inside the paint. This is.
I don't think he's going to get. I think the Celtics are going to be fine. I think Al Horford just needs to play well. They need to get contributions across the board. Rozier has to set the table like he's been doing. Tatum needs to keep playing that 20-plus point per game scorer that he's been. Jaylen Brown has to keep shooting well, and you've got to get contributions from Marcus Morris too. Whoever you need to get out there to really get your contributions, get that scoring, you got to get it done, because they're not going to. I don't think they're just going to beat LeBron tonight on defense alone. I think they're going to have to play good offense to get the win.
I agree. I mean, even when they won Game 5, it wasn't a great offensive performance. I think they shot 37% from the field in that game,
but they still dominated that game.
They did, but it's one of those things where you look at when a team dominates, how did you dominate? In a way, lately I've always felt more confident when you dominate on defense, right? But in this situation, when you're at home, I'd rather see you dominate by scoring. But then again, with the type of players you have in your team, you have a lot of role players that can explode at any moment, and you're right where you want to be at home in Game 7. I think that team, especially when Morris plays well at the Garden, I just feel like it gets everybody at the Garden going. Have you noticed that? Like, when Morris is scoring and he's out there and he's
and Morris is a physical presence too. He tried to assert himself as like the LeBron stopper. And there's no real LeBron stopper, but he's doing that physical player, trying to be the emotional spark for the team. I see that. I think he's valuable just because when Marcus Morris takes a jump shot, he's good at going into mid-range and creating space for a shot and getting off clean shots and knocking down mid-range shots, getting easy shots. And then he's also good with open threes, even contested threes sometimes, and he attacks the basket decently. So he's good in terms of a scoring presence. He also plays good defense, but he's a good offensive presence to have on the court, because he's a good option if he has the ball in his hands to score. But just looking at the Game 5 stats, like, you can see why the Celtics won this game, because they only shot 36%, but the Cavs only shot 42%. And if you look at the number of field goals, they both made 31. So in that sense, the Celtics also made 4 more threes. They made 9 more free throws, even though they only took 4 more than the Cavs. And they out-rebounded the Cavs. And let's see what the turnovers. And the Cavs had 15 turnovers to the Celtics, 10 turnovers. And that's a killer because, if you get into a defensive battle, like, scoring 96 points in the NBA is not tremendously high, but if the Celtics can hold you to 83 points, you're not going to beat them usually. It's very hard to beat the Celtics because then in that case, like, I want to look at the box score. But, Tatum had an efficient night, 7 of 15 from the field,
he was a star
3 of 7 from 3, and 7 of 8 from the free throw line. So he was shooting about 45% from the field, shooting about 42% from three-point range, and 87.5% from the free throw line. And he had 7 rebounds. Al Horford went for 15-12 and only had 2 turnovers. He was 1 for 2 from 3, 4 for 9 from the field. Even Aaron Baines was 3 of 7. Like, that's an efficient performance from him to go 3 of 7 from the field. And really, it was just because Terry Rozier was 3 of 15 and Jaylen Brown was 4 of 15. So they didn't shoot the ball particularly well. But frankly, with those two guys, you don't really often see them taking bad shots. So in a game where they miss 11, 12 shots, it doesn't matter because they're trying to make the right play. And if you focus too much on the outcome as opposed to the process of how it came out, you can kind of get lost in, oh, you didn't shoot well. But the Celtics played real well.
Yeah.
As a team in that game.
I mean, I'll throw a nugget in there too, because we about our little Rozier and Marcus Smart argument. I felt like, especially in the second half, like when they really weren't playing Terry that many minutes. I thought Marcus Smart, did a pretty good job of just controlling the flow of the game. You know what I mean? Like I just saw him for a stretch in that third quarter, fourth quarter, where he had the ball.
I'll come out and say that I don't like it when Marcus is running point unless he's doing actions that get him or other people closer to the basket, because you often see him taking terrible three-pointers. Like when I see him take a three, unless it's really wide open, I kind of cringe when he takes a shot, because it's like there's probably a better shot on the floor, and I know he's confident he has to take those shots, but it's better for the Celtics when he's out there. Because I see him out there with Rozier, and I'm like, no, give the ball to Rozier first. Let Rozier run a play, because he runs better plays than Marcus Smart does.
Absolutely.
Up at the top of the key. I think in the half-court offense, Terry Rozier is much better than Marcus Smart. And Marcus Smart just plays that kind of, like, he blocked LeBron's dunk attempt. Like he's the only guy on the Celtics that's going to jump up with LeBron James and swat the shit out of his shot.
He's a dog.
He's
Marcus,
a monster.
He said it. Marcus Smart said it's going to be a dogfight, and I expect Smart to be on LeBron early. But, yeah, I mean, as far as this Game 7, I'm confident. I'm confident on us being at home.
They're at home. It's no guarantee because they're at home, but that's a good thing for them to be in Boston playing. They'll have the crowd behind them, whatever that's worth, and they've got to come out and play better. They've got to get Al Horford going. They can't be content with having gotten to Game 7. They got to push the envelope and make it happen.
Do you think that the stage is going to be too big for them?
No, because no stage has been too big for them so far. Even in the games they've lost, you're not saying that the Celtics.
This is a different stage, though. This is
no, but
one
it
game
doesn't.
away from the finals.
It doesn't matter because every game the Celtics have played, it doesn't matter if they've lost. They've gone into it. They've looked prepared. They don't make a lot of silly mistakes. They make mistakes, obviously, but they don't make really bad mistakes where it makes the whole team look bad. They make simple mistakes, and I think like they've played so many come from behind games this year. They've won so many games that they shouldn't have, that I don't think they get shook by any stage. It's just a matter of execution. Sometimes they hit their shots and sometimes they don't, because they're not the greatest shooting team out there. That's just a fact, but they're good enough that they can either beat you on offense or they can out defend you, and I think either way they've got a good chance at home.
For me, I feel like I look at the human element, and like you're saying, I don't think that, I mean, for me, it's different. I just think that on this stage, and I'm not saying this will happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does. I'm talking about for just the Tatums and the Jaylen Browns and the Terry Roziers, guys who have not been at this point. This is just a different game. Legacies are made in Game 7, and it's crazy to think that the Celtics, without Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, are one game away from the finals. Like, I think in this game, Milwaukee was, first round, and, people come into the series thought it could swing either way, but this is like, I almost look the Celtics are definitive favorites. I think the way this game is being looked at is the Celtics should win this game unless LeBron goes supernova, right? Like, I would go as far as say I think they're comfortable favorites, right? Close to comfortable, and it's going to be because they played so well at home. The talk that they're 10-0 at home this postseason, and
it doesn't matter that much. It just shows they play well at home. It doesn't mean they're going to win. It just means that they've got a good track record at home. They're a good team that a lot of teams play better at home. You're sleeping in your own bed. There are certain aspects of that are part of it. But they're playing LeBron in Game 7, so they know that he's going to come correct. And LeBron, he hasn't really shrunk from any performances in recent memory. I haven't really seen, he had that one game in this series where he had like 6 turnovers, the 1 for 6 from 3 game. But other than that, he's played well, and he looked tired in that game. So unless he comes out and has some more mysterious leg cramps in this game, I think he should be fine.
What do you think you're going to see from LeBron tonight? So LeBron is 5-2 all time in Game 7s. He's won his last 5. The last time he lost the Game 7 was right here in 2008 when he went at it with Paul Pierce and that big 3 first came together. He's averaging 34 points, 9 boards, and 5 assists with a 48% shooting percentage from the field in Game 7s. Do you think, what do you think you're going to get from him? You think he's all out tonight? You think he's playing all 48 minutes? You think he's going to explode? Or you think he's going to...
I think it'd be a bad idea for him to play all 48 minutes. Like, you saw earlier in the series that he got tired, and it may be maybe LeBron has really figured out at this point that, he's so good at turning the switch that even in the Game 5, he wasn't super concerned about playing badly. Like, he knew he'd played badly, but he was like, I still have Game 6 and 7. So because we took care of business in 1-2 at home, even if we lose Game 5 against the Celtics and I'm not feeling it, we've got 2 more games after that I can attack. And so I don't really see him changing that at this point. I think he probably comes out with the same mindset that he had last time, and I think he's going to play well. He's got to assert himself in terms of scoring, though. That's got to be his priority, not passing. Fuck passing. Fuck his teammates.
Why is he tired? Because you hear it all regular season how LeBron's coasting himself, right, during the regular season so he can be rested for the playoffs. I just feel like you can't have it both ways. Are you coasting or are you not coasting? Right? You can't, it's I thought the reason why you coasted during the regular season, you would end up being the 4th seed and, maybe not going all out for all 82 games was because you wanted to protect yourself for this moment. Why are you tired in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals?
Well, I mean, so you remember when a few years ago LeBron had the cramps in the finals and they were carrying him off the court and all that?
I won't blame him for that. The heat was too high.
It was, but there have been times in the past, because LeBron is a good athlete and he doesn't seem to. It seems like other than that brief time with the Heat where he had back problems or whatever, other than that, he's never really gotten hurt in his career. So the only thing that could really stop him is if he's had to do too much in games previously and he just kind of comes out, and because he's got less energy, that he's in more of a pass-first mode where he's less aggressive, and if he had better teammates, he'd be fine theoretically because he'd be able to pass to them. But I think if he comes out with that mentality because he's tired again, I don't think that's going to work for him at all, because in that case, if you know LeBron is going to pass the ball, you don't need to double team him, because if he's going to pass the ball more often than he's going to try to create a shot for himself, that person's not worthy of a double team, because they're not going to shoot it unless you send a double team. So he's got to assert himself.
So do you double team him tonight if you're the Celtics? Fortunately,
not right away. Not right away, because he's basically playing point guard for them. You don't just trap the point guard, because that creates easy shots. You only really start doing that if he demonstrates that he's shooting well, especially if his jump shot is falling. Mm-hmm. At that point, yes, you do take the ball out of his hands and you start double teaming him, but take advantage of the fact that this guy has to be creating 70% of the Cavs offense when he's on the court. It frustrates me when I see him doing possessions where he's just standing up at the top of the key at the 3-point line, just kind of walking around waiting for somebody on the wing to break free so they can come take the ball so that they can pass it back to him so he can get a play going. They're not playing very good offense in terms of how they move the ball around, in my opinion. So you don't really want to double team him in that case, because if he's gonna try to be LeBron Johnson, then he should let him pass. Don't double team him, let him pass.
And you don't want to get his teammates' confidence going either, because if you double team LeBron and you leave
JR in the
and
corner,
J.R. Smith, they start making a couple shots. So we didn't even talk about, because I wanna wrap this up in a minute, but X factors for the Cavaliers, man. My X factor for Cleveland is, of course, it's Kevin Love is out. Man, it's crazy. I was gonna say Kyle Korver. I think when he's playing really well, when he's shooting the ball and just getting off screens, they're tough to beat. They're really tough when Korver's hitting that wide open J and he's just cutting screens. But I'm gonna say Larry Nance Jr. is gonna be my X factor. His ability to be able to guard inside and make things tough for Al Horford. I think if Al Horford plays poorly, I think it's going to be tough for the Celtics to really generate offense. I'm thinking that the way Al Horford plays, this is my take. I think if Al Horford does not play well, I think they will struggle. And I think Larry Nance Jr. defensively can have a huge impact on that. So, okay, I'll say Korver and Larry Nance, because I think even with the defense, you're gonna need scoring on the road too. So Korver and Larry Nance Jr. are my X factors. I think Korver, he's a veteran. Like, you're one of the best three-point shooters the NBA has ever seen. This is your time. This is your time. This is why they brought you, to be the guy to hit perimeter shots when LeBron's trying to drive in. Like, they need you for this kind of game. They need your three-point shooting. So, Nance, Kevin Love's out. This is your opportunity to get in there and do some damage inside. Those are my guys. Am I cheating by giving you two, or do I have to choose one?
No, I can choose one.
Okay.
I think Tristan Thompson, if he plays well, he attacks what's the Celtics' biggest weakness, which is that they don't have the Kendrick Perkins type player on the inside unless Aaron Baines plays that role. If he gets a bunch of offensive rebounds, that makes it so that Cleveland doesn't have to necessarily shoot quite as well, because they can rely on him to create extra possessions, get tip backs, put the ball up from right around the basket where he gets his rebounds. I think if Tristan Thompson does that and he can limit Al Horford and what he's able to do and play good defense and contribute some scoring, I think that'll be an X factor for the Cavs, because LeBron wanted them to pay him $20 million for a reason, and it's not because he's a Kardashian. It's because he's
He's money for that baby.
But he's good enough to play defense, control the boards, and make a certain impact on offense. So I think that should be the Cavs. They've got to get LeBron going, but the X factor other than LeBron will be Tristan Thompson, I think.
I like that. Because they're going to need a guy inside who can slow the game down and give them extra possessions. And Tristan Thompson's a really good... like I said, we said this in the car before we started recording. There were a couple years where this dude was a great offensive rebounder, and then, he started dating Chloe, and then boom, his game just took off. But I guess last thing about, just this game. How do you think history is going to look back on this from both angles? The way I see it, the way I see it, right? If LeBron wins this game, I think for the next 4 or 5 days before obviously the conference finals in the NBA finals, I think the talk is going to be, it doesn't matter who he's playing with, this guy can just get it done, right? It's just
except for in the finals, though. If he was in the Western Conference, he wouldn't have made the finals any of the last He potentially wouldn't have made the finals since 2012, 2013, because if being in the East has made it incredibly easy for him to get to the finals. Even this year, he's playing the Celtics without Kyrie and Gordon Hayward. The Celtics would be smashing the Cavs right now if they had their 2 other All-Stars, Tice, all these dudes that they had got hurt this year. The Celtics would be
mauling the Cavaliers right now. If Gordon Hayward and Kyrie were out there, if you then have Terry Rozier coming off the bench, not having to play Marcus Smart, having him taking some of those threes that Marcus is taking and having Kyrie take them, like the Celtics would be smashing the Cavs right now.
Yeah, it's just crazy for me to wonder how would some of these guys have developed, right? Like I think
Tatum would be the sixth guy. He would be doing what Marcus Morris is doing right now. But I wouldn't be as worried about that because you'd probably be getting something like 20 points per game from Kyrie and maybe like 18 from Hayward. And I think with those two as your lead players, it makes it easier on Al Horford too. Because if he's not the second best player, but he's the third or fourth best offensive player on the floor, then you can get him more easy opportunities. Like if he has better teammates around him, because he's a good shooter, and if he had better teammates, he'd probably be even better.
Yeah, I agree. I think they would have been a dominant team. I just feel like with Tatum and Brown getting this many minutes and Terry Rozier, I think their growth is just, it's almost like they got an extra year to develop. And next year, this offseason, you're gonna have some questions.
But that's gonna mean they're not gonna be like the Warriors, where the Warriors, one of the keys to their run was that Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Steph Curry all signed below market level deals when they weren't elite level players, because even though they had shown some sign of how good they could be, they hadn't really shown that sort of superstar potential quite yet. Whereas the Celtics guys, you could even argue, because they're showing their talent too soon and they're giving them almost too much of an opportunity to develop. You might say that you can never have too much of a bad thing, but if those Celtics players show their potential earlier on, then you might be in a situation where you're not able to sign one of them. For example, Jaylen Brown, right? If he's not starting like he is this year, let's say he's coming off the bench, or if he's really like the fifth best option on the offensive floor at that point, he may not be scoring as many points this year. And then in contract negotiations, you may be able to say, well, stay with us at this below market rate, and if you turn out like Klay Thompson, you'll get a contract later. Or if you turn out like Draymond Green, you'll get a contract that'll reward you at some point. But for the Celtics, I think they're going to kind of cruise right past that point, and that means they're going to have to make decisions about who their best two or three players are going to be going forward. Is it going to be, are you going to just develop Brown and Tatum and take advantage of the fact that you control their contracts and build the team around them? Or are there too many players worthy of max level deals on the team? So I would say Tatum, Brown, Kyrie, Gordon Hayward, and Al Horford are either worthy of or actually take in a max level salary. So how do you pay all those guys and keep them on the team long term, I think is the question. If they're showing so early on in their career how good they can be.
A lot of that, I think, comes down tonight because this is a chance to go to the finals. And if you do go to the finals, if you beat this LeBron James led team, that tells us, okay, we have enough perimeter scoring, even without Hayward and Kyrie. Assuming we go to the finals, we lose to Golden State, it's probably going to be because of a talent issue. Maybe not because of a wing issue, but just because you're not there yet. In terms of your development and your skill set, you're still developing. Golden State, they already kind of have, they're superstars. They've been where you are already. So, but if you can beat LeBron, that tells me that you are not as weak inside to a point where like you really have to go get an Anthony Davis or a Cat. It'd be great if you did, but you're not lacking in terms of perimeter scoring. So you can move one of those guys in the off season. But I think if the Celtics win, tonight, yeah, I mean, like I said, then that just tells you that they're okay, that in terms of their perimeter scoring. But in order to take that next step and beat maybe like a Golden State or Houston, we need you guys to develop to that next level where you can start giving us that 18, 20 to 25 points a game. And if we really believe that you two, Jaylen Brown and Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum can do that with their rookie contracts, then we can move a Hayward and get that big that you want, because you probably want that big superstar that can clog up the paint. Because at that point, it's like if you beat the Cavs and you lose to the Warriors, you might as well just get some more scoring at that point. You might as well move Hayward and get a player at that position. Move Hayward and get a player out of position where you could use a little more scoring at. Because in the end, I think if you get to the finals and you lose, it's going to be because you didn't have enough scoring. But in that case, it is tough to say because you don't have your best scorers. But that tells me you don't need all your you have enough scorers right between your 2s and your 3s. So you might as well just trade one of them and get some value. And if you're gonna get value, go get some scoring in a spot where you wouldn't get it. But to wrap it up, man, I think that if LeBron does lose this game, if he wins, we'll talk about how he's able to dominate the East. But then he's gonna be 3-6 in the finals. So we won't even talk about the fact that he won the East. If he wins the East,
it doesn't fucking matter. He doesn't play against
anymore.
the good team. Like if he was in the West and he had made the finals 3 out of 5 years, that would be more impressive than him making 5 straight finals appearances in the East, just based on the competition he'd be playing. But I think the one thing to say though, I think from watching the Celtics all year, I had a sense, especially when I saw what Kyrie was doing, I thought that they had all the pieces that they needed.
And when Gordon Hayward went down, that was a bummer. But if they're getting him back, I think people are... I think they're saying that the Celtics need another piece, and I say they don't necessarily. They may have too many pieces in some sense. They may have so many guys that are so good that they're not going to be able to afford all of them long term, but I think you would want to keep as many of them together, and especially seeing the group of, frankly, seeing Rozier and Brown and Tatum and Horford and Baines, like that group out there. That's a solid rotation, so you have to consider trying to keep somebody like a Rozier. I think you're going to have to let Marcus Smart go after this year, unfortunately. But, I think that's just kind of the way of the road. I think that Al Horford is a good big man, but he's not going to be a max-level player in a few years. So he may be more affordable in the future. And so the question is, do you really want to make that move for a big man, considering how if Al Horford is good enough, like, just get a Kendrick Perkins. Don't get, like, an all-star, because you already have enough guys on the wing. Mm-hmm. As long as you have those big 6'8", 6'9", wing-type players who can just play that zone defense, maybe it makes that big man kind of superfluous, because especially watching the playoffs, because I wasn't quite sold in the regular season, but then especially watching them in the playoffs, especially watching Jaylen Brown, for somebody who I so often seem to be saying that it could be a trade candidate, a good trade candidate. I watch him too, and I'm like, you know what? If the Celtics had a max level, if any team had a max level contract and they could offer it to him, they might, because he's that good and he has that much potential. So I think if the Celtics can hold on to them, they should really try to hold on to as many pieces from this team as they can, because this team's a really good cohesive team. They play well together, and they're all starting to come into their own, whether it's Rozier or Tatum and Brown, or once they get Kyrie and Gordon Hayward back, they're going to have a lot of pieces. So I think they don't really have to be quite as aggressive. They don't really need to be free agent type contenders. None of that shit. They just need to keep the team they have right now. And I really don't think there's much of a difference between winning that Game 7 and losing. You kind of dance on the edge of a knife. The shit happens. People win and lose games, and it's not necessarily always the best team that wins. So I think the Celtics can hold their heads high whether they win or lose, and it shouldn't have to be a question of they weren't good enough if they didn't win. It's like maybe they were good enough and they just didn't play well enough that one night. Sometimes that happens in sports. Sometimes, you take into it, because then you could read into it later on and be like, oh, wait a minute,
the Celtics didn't have their two best players in Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. Imagine if they had them for Game 7. So I think they've, within the team, excluding Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, that team has shown that they're capable of getting to the finals. You see it in them. So I think they've done a remarkable job, and they should really be proud of themselves.
I agree. They're playing left-handed. They got to Game 7 the East Finals. So to this point, to me, it's all gravy.
Like, imagine if the Sixers had gotten to that point. If they had gotten to a Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals, everybody would have said, "Oh, next year they're gonna be finals contenders." Everybody would say that, even if they had lost. So I don't think people should be making or breaking this team in their estimation based on this one game. You got to look at the bigger picture, and I think when you look at it, you see the Celtics have a really good opportunity going forward, and they have a good opportunity in Game 7 to get to the finals. They may get smashed in the finals, but they'll have gotten there, and that's a big accomplishment.
You haven't even seen our full power yet.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's a fun problem to have, and it should be an interesting off season. So my prediction, I did pick the Cavs to win this series. I didn't even think the Celtics to get this far, but this is Game 7, and home teams are. If I have it here, home teams are 104-26 all time in Game 7. So that's about 80%. It's the NBA. Home teams usually win Game 7s. I'm taking the Celtics. The role players will step up. I think they'll get. I think it's going to be like a 100-95 kind of game. I think it'll be competitive in the first half. I think they'll go on a big run in the third quarter, and then LeBron will get some like cheese points, and in a short window of garbage time, and the Celtics will hold on for a late victory. And NBA Finals, here we come.
I say Celtics in 7. I don't know if I picked them to win this series. Did I?
When we did our first show, dude, it was like the first round, so we didn't even get that far.
I can't even.
We were previewing Milwaukee.
But seeing them in Game 7, I think they're the better team. People say that the team with the best player wins, and I don't think that's true. I think the best team wins, generally speaking. So I think the Celtics, they're more well-rounded. They're playing at home, and if Terry Rozier and Tatum and Brown, if those guys step up and Al Horford plays the way he's capable of, I don't see how LeBron James can overcome all of that by himself. I don't see it.
And that'll do it, folks. That is episode 2 of the Rich and Facts podcast. Be sure to tune in as myself and Alex Monteverde, my co-host. We've got a lot more stuff to get to you guys the next coming week. So thank you for tuning in once again, and enjoy the game.